everyone. I'm Reetika Fleming, Executive Research Leader at HFS, and your host for a videocast today on the future of process intelligence. We'd love to share some of the key results of a brand new research study we've done in this space, surveying over 400 Global 2000 enterprises on their use of process mining and task mining tools today, the challenges they're facing, what are some of the emerging best practices we see for this exciting emerging technology. Joined to drive this discussion today are two subject matter experts in the space. We partnered on this study with Genpact, and we've got Amaresh Tripathy to represent the on-the-ground client perspectives there. And we've got process mining pioneer Heymen Jansen to help us talk a little bit about what has been his experience on the practitioner side and what he hopes to see in the next few years of process intelligence. So to get us started, I'd love to maybe share one of the biggest findings and just the sentiment that we've seen with process intelligence, right? Our study found there's double-digit growth in terms of spending on process intelligence, software and services in the next year to 18 months. Most companies want to get impact out of their process intelligence initiatives in under 3 years and some in under 1 year. So really just a lot of bullishness in terms of, the use of process intelligence, the growth of this category. So I want to understand why and what are the top demand drivers. So let's get our panelists on fire here. So Amaresh, let's go to you first. So why do you think demand is where it's at with this technology?
I think one, thank you so much, Ritika, for having us here. The big reason, if you really think, if you step back, what does process intelligence gonna do? And it's why is it like the demand is so high? Two broad reasons. Number one is it's the season of data, right? We want to understand, as enterprises trying to become more data driven, they want to kind of they want to have judgment, but at the same time kind of have a lot more baseline fundamental data around how they make decisions in the bowels of the organization, right? In terms of how the whole machinery works within each of the processes, there isn't a very easy way to actually understand that, right, at the front lines. And here comes process intelligence and the series of software technologies around that starts enabling you to kind of get into, it's almost like a dark data side of the things. It kind of uncovers that dark data to actually make better decisions. So that's kind of obviously it's very attractive to kind of go towards that and kind of capture that aspect of it. That's number one. Second, actually, there is a lot of work that actually happens and the front lines in a lot of the processes, which are managed fundamentally by it's in people's brain, like how some of the processes actually work. So it's not like very documented. Everything is very clean on how it actually works. It's just there's a lot of like wetware, as they call it, that drives some of these things. So one, not only capture, and what has happened over the last 3 years, if you think about it, is the great resignation, people leaving, a lot of churn. How do you actually kind of make sense of any of that? And then suddenly this becomes the baseline to kind of capture again. So it goes back to the data, but part of it is that is even exaggerated by the fact that people are leaving, and you need something to kind of capture that. So those two, I think, at a very macro level, are driving the demand, and it will continue to drive the demand.
Heymen?
Yeah, I'm very much agreeing to that, Amaresh. I mean, I've been in business process improvement for many decades. You can see that on the color of my hair. And, it is as it is. If there is no technology to really look into, how your process is running, you're kind of into the dark and you're fully dependent on people who understand process. And like you said, Amaresh, people come and go now much faster than maybe 30 years ago. So also really deep process knowledge is also vanishing. So it means that you're dependent on other ways of finding out how your process is running. And with process intelligence, so now data comes into the play. Now you see that there's a new, let's say, profession coming into business process knowledge, showing you how things really work. Mm-hmm. And of course, then there is a kind of a wow effect, because you always were dependent on, business consultants, continuous improvement leaders, black belts, whatever it might be. And they had their own vision on reality. And now you see, okay, maybe things running in a totally different way than we thought. So there's a kind of a wow effect.
Yes.
Of course. And it's a little bit too early, I think. But of course, we need to find out whether this wow effect is going to lead to real business success.
Yeah.
Because you still will need some sort of a business knowledge to fix the issue. Because, making the issue visualized does not mean that you have solved the problem. So you still will need the same people, understanding process and how to do. But the good thing of data, let's say, capturing is in process management, is that at least the time it takes to understand how the process really is running is maybe not more than 5 or 10% than what you normally would do with interviews and looking all kinds of brainstorm sessions and workshops and so on. So that's good. There is one other element, if I may. There is a famous, I must say, a famous Dutch soccer player, Johan Cruyff, also a famous trainer, at least, in Europe. He was famous also about, his expressions about how life works in practice. And he said, you only see it when you get it. And he was talking about soccer, but it's the same thing with business process management. If you don't get it, you don't see it.
Yes.
And now with having processes, just by capturing data, so the digital twin of an organization, I would say, just showing the people this is how it runs, then you are able to show people, okay, this is the reality. And then people start to think, okay, now I get it. We are doing it in a totally different and maybe totally wrong way. But it also means that you're going to start to ask the right questions, because what you don't know, you cannot ask questions about.
Yeah.
And that's also a great thing, I think.
That's great. So what I'm hearing from you both is, there's been this shift towards just trying to get more data and analytics in an organization. We've always had, customer data sets, things like that, but really getting a handle on your process data is now becoming a possibility, and gives you a chance to, make informed decisions about how operations run based on actual data and facts, and not just gut check and feel.
Yeah.
And then, Amaresh, I agree with your point about it has been the perfect storm for something like this, moving to hybrid work environments. Heymen, you have a comment?
Yeah, and not to forget, Reetika, people love tools, huh?
Yeah. Because
people tend to believe that tools are going to solve an issue. So if there is a tool on the market, around, this is a business improvement tool, everybody thinks, okay, now my problem is solved, which is not necessarily the truth. But so having new tools always excites people. Yeah.
Yeah, can't beat a shiny new tool to play with.
Yeah.
So knowing these demand drivers, then our study found that looking across functions in an organization, finance and accounting is the #1 demand driver for process intelligence technology, followed by IT and then digital departments and initiatives. So Heymen, does that line up with your experience, and why are these functions so excited about process intelligence?
Yeah, on one hand, I understand that that people from IT and finance and accountant are very much interested in looking into new technologies regarding process management. On the other hand, it surprised me a little bit because my experience is that it actually started in the business. And I'm talking about operations. And when I'm talking about operations, I mean sales management, project management, engineering, planning, purchasing, production, shipping, and so on. So everything what is built around transactions, because that's what you basically want to do. You want to take a look at, your digital twin of an organization. How are transactions running? And that's why process mining or process intelligence is not about reporting solely. Of course, it's important, but it's really about understanding the process you are running.
Yeah. Amaresh, Genpact's got a big business in finance and accounting. Do you see a link there with why they're excited about this tech?
There is. I mean, both finance and accounting and IT. Actually, I think from a very business perspective, it makes sense because that is where you have shared services, right? And when you have shared services, you have scale, and when you have scale, and by and large, those are, I would say, from the proliferation of technology perspective, there's a ton of technology still proliferated, but there's still more standardized technology stacks. So all those 2-3 things, I think, kind of lead to those leaders jumping in more. Right? To Heymen's point is there is a lot more value in, like, even in the middle office and front office functions, which are very transaction based. But given there is scale, there is some sort of standardization, those leaders have basically jumped into to adopt it first. I think that's probably what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. From our research, we're finding visibility is actually the #1 driver for this, is just being able to stitch together a view across end-to-end functions, and then also those entities, right? Shared services, working with external service providers, looking across markets or regions. That's invaluable stuff, especially today, right? Looking at supply chain disruption, etc.
Absolutely.
So if the demand is there, the excitement is there, the spend is there and coming, what is holding people back? Amaresh, why are clients challenged in getting the most success from this technology? And one of our research findings also alluded to this, because only about 29% at most of companies are considering their process intelligence as scaled up today.
No, I mean, just use the baseball analogy. We are in the first innings of a 9-inning game here. So you're in Boston, so you probably will appreciate that. And I think there are a few reasons, I think, why this is there. In some ways, if you really step back, right, this is actually, to Heymen's point, it is a very technology-centric even today. Right, it could be a lot more, but today, right now, it is very technology centric, and by and large, it is also technology without a home in most organizations. Right, like if you think about data analytics leaders, they many times don't take ownership of a technology or tool like that. Right, you actually find it's somewhere within business, but you still need technology. It's it's in the gray area in terms of the ownership within the organization. Second is it's seen as a technology versus kind of a much more holistic process management and improvement. And what leads to is the talent. It's actually a very hard, I mean, when we do and field teams to kind of go and do that, you need to bring 3 things together. People who understand actually the process itself, so which metrics actually matter. So that's one. Second is you need to understand the tech stack, right? Whether it's an SAP, whether it's an Oracle, and you need to understand how some of the kind of data is organized in that tech stack to kind of do that. And third is someone need to be able to pull the data out and organize it and make sense of the data, which is kind of the data analysis part of it. All those 3 things coming together without a clear mandate. I mean, normally like one of the folks in the organization is leading it. So that kind of creates some of the challenges. And third is, listen, this is also the maturity of the technology. It is still evolving. It is very exciting. It can do stuff that we never thought it could be done. And we always used to kind of go and do interviews and workshops, and suddenly it can do it. But having said that, the technology continues to mature in terms of the connectors it needs to build to different technology stacks. I mean, whether it's structured data, unstructured data, there's a whole host of things that are kind of coming. As I said, this is early days. And while there is a lot of excitement behind it, I think the entire ecosystem is learning through this, and it will continue to do that. But the future, at least I'm very positive about.
That's great. Heymen, any war stories to share with us? What were some of your biggest challenges?
Of course, finding out where there is an issue, that's the easy part. Solving the issue, that's a totally different animal, isn't it? But like I said, it's already very important that you can find out as soon as possible where are the opportunities to take out waste or to improve quality, or anything you might want to do to improve your processes. But you still will need people to understand how the process should work, how it better could work. But the data part, I think, is very, very important, because at least, there are no discussions anymore whether this is the right process or the wrong process. You can just see, whether the process is running in the right or the wrong way, and how long it costs to deliver from point A to point B. So there is no discussion anymore about how the process really should run. You can see just by visualizing it, what are the opportunities to take cost out, or to improve quality, or to take out lead time, for example.
And I mean, just to kind of add to that point, is what you're referring to is kind of almost the data IQ of the organization, right? Yeah. We're running processes and data IQ, and Ritika, we might have talked in the past about. I mean, so for Genpact, we run this data bridge program, which is essentially a data literacy program for the frontline employees, so that they are more data aware. Just because you're process aware doesn't mean you understand what does the data mean, and you have to bring those two things together. So yeah. there's a cultural aspect to it that actually, as we start doing in scale and see the benefit of it, that's going to become very, very important.
Yeah, I absolutely agree to that, Amaresh. That brings me also to the point that also data validation is a really important part of business process improvement, to make sure that people not only see, what could potentially go better, but also that they really understand that this is as it is, that they accept the truth. Mm-hmm. and start from there. I know examples that people said, okay, all right, this is absolutely not what we have expected. And people were crying out loud, okay, this is really not the way we should do it, but let's take it as the truth, and let's start from there, because then you have a new starting point, improving your processes again. And let's not argue endless about whether our on-time delivery is 99% or 80 point whatever. Huh? So that's very important, so that people understand this is the bare truth and nothing else.
Yeah, I completely agree. So even with our study, right, we asked about the biggest challenges holding back adoption, going across people, process, tech, data integration, and other challenges, and people came out on top. So it's just what you guys are saying, right? A big component of this is getting people to be comfortable making decisions based on data that we now have, right? Yeah, and data proficiency programs, I imagine, are going to be needed in every function, every job that you do. Sure. So, yeah. Another aspect that I think we need to get right with process intelligence in the medium to long term certainly is how are we measuring the success of these projects, right? We found that 60% of process intelligence projects today are getting measured on productivity improvements, which, I understand it's easier to track. Certainly, as we looked at use cases like you mentioned, trying to get visibility, process excellence initiatives, you can tie that to productivity, but is there room for more? Because we also asked about what do you expect the impact of process intelligence to have in your organization, and 43% of enterprises said they want to use it to get data to win strategically in their market. So I feel like that's a disconnect, right? From making strategic use of data, but then you're still measuring your projects by productivity improvements. So would love to get your take on this. Amaresh, what other outcomes should we be looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think it will eventually lead to all outcomes in the organization wherever there is a transaction based. I mean, just going back, it's the first innings, and measuring productivity. One, is easier. Secondly, it's very exciting right now to kind of go and start the diagnostic. Right? This is what the process looks like. This is what we believe. This is what it is there. That's one thing. But then saying, okay, now I need to change certain things to kind of move things around. A lot of these teams don't have the power to kind of influence the interventions, right? And the interventions on the productivity side are still easier to kind of drive. Doing on the cost side of things, or doing on the revenue side of things, much harder. You have much more different kind of a stakeholder engagement that you would need to kind of go and drive towards. So it's I think it's a maturity aspect, not that it cannot be driven. The technology is there, the tools are there, the approaches is there. What's really going to be interesting over the next few quarters and years is how do you actually organize, what's the organization structure that allows you to essentially have both a power to intervene on the various metrics to kind of go and drive that, almost like a command center kind of approach, where not only are you looking at the data, what it can do, but you're able to go and drive something in terms of what changes you need to make and the right empowerment. So I think there's a lot of organization design and structure that needs to kind of come along with it as we go for more, I would say, more important or more revenue side of metrics than the productivity kind of metrics. Right now, it is, as I said, still early days.
So we are going to do it all.
Absolutely.
Heymen, do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? I mean, these goals are not conflicting at all. I give you two examples. If you are in a market where lead times are extremely important, so let's say construction market or something like that, make the stuff, distribution centers, etc., all around the globe. Millions of products need to be supplied on the right time to your customers. If you could reduce your lead time, that will probably improve your productivity, because if your lead time is longer than is necessary, I would call that waste. And waste is a productivity aspect. Secondly, if your time to market is much shorter than your competition, you might also grow the business. So that's also, by the way, in practice, one of our experiences. Second example is regarding sustainability, for example. If your processes are running in a better way, shorter lead times, less disruptions, you probably do not see the necessity to have express transportations via plane instead of train or road. So that leads to actually a kind of a win-win situation. You're basically improving your emissions on CO2, and at the same time you're reducing cost. And that's also what I have seen in the past in pilots where we did that calculation, and we really saw maybe not a fully one-to-one, but a strong correlation between cost and sustainability.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. So you're both really talking about organizational design and priorities that we need to keep in mind. So I have a last round of questions for you. Really, that it's more about advice you have for enterprises that are either starting out on their process intelligence journeys or trying to figure out how to scale better. One of the findings that we had in our research study hinted at an emerging best practice, right, which was almost all, so I want to say 94% or so of companies that report that they've scaled up their process intelligence initiatives also think that they have extremely well integrated with other COEs or initiatives around AI, automation, and other emerging tech. Versus only 58 or so of total responses, right? So that tells me if you are prioritizing collaboration and not looking at process intelligence projects in a silo of a particular use case, it gives you a much better chance of actually scaling in your organization. So would love to get any other sort of pointers, advice from both of you. So Amaresh, maybe let me go to you first.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, Ritika, we were talking about it, like who owns it, and I think given the data density that you would require in the talent base to kind of go and do that, it's not a surprise that that's what we do in Genpact. We keep it closer to a data analytics business for precisely that reason, even though we know fundamentally it's a very interdisciplinary in nature. But I think this whole notion around what is the hub and spoke model, kind of figuring it out, right? Which are the businesses, is the business sponsor around it, and who's kind of like the technical sponsor around it, kind of, and in lockstep and organize that so that org aspect of it becomes very important. I think that's number one. Second is going after which metrics are we going after, right? And kind of where do you prove the value? Because understanding what is wrong today is interesting, and actually it throws a light in very valuable ways. But to sustain these programs, you need to understand what business metric you're going after and be more purposeful about that. And the third aspect of it is just understanding the cultural aspect of it. The data literacy is going to be huge. And this is for frontline data literacy we're talking about. So those three things, as organizations come along, I think there's some best practices emerging. It seems from the study here on the first one. The second and third one also become very, very important as to kind of go and drive these things. Every time we have seen working with clients, 2 or 3 of those things we have met.
That's great. Heymen?
Yeah, I think benchmarking is extremely important, specifically in bigger organizations. There is a culture aspect to that because, in bigger organizations, you also have this kind of not invented here syndrome. Huh? So that's also what you need to manage. But in principle, I think benchmarking is the unique opportunity to learn fast and to deploy improvements in a much faster way. That also brings me then to collaboration. And so I'm fully with you when you say, okay, don't look to process intelligence as a silo. There is no silver bullet. Absolutely not. 50 years from now, there will be other techniques, and they also will not be the silver bullet as well. So it's always a combination of bringing technology and skills together. So it's always a combination of business process people, data intelligence or process intelligence, data scientists, IT, traditional IT people. So it's always a combination of people collaborating. And then I fully agree to your point, Amaresh. First start with a common goal. What's the objective? And then it's much easier to collaborate together, because then at least you know where you are and where you want to go. And then you also can easily measure, okay, or define how are we going to get there, and how do we know that we have arrived in the journey. So collaboration and benchmarking, extremely important to do business process improvement in a much faster way than traditional.
Couldn't agree more. Collaboration and benchmarking. Let that be your takeaway for today. So thank you, Amaresh. Thank you, Heymen. This was a fabulous conversation, and thank you for watching as well. If you found our discussion interesting, go check out the report. There's tons of other data points and perspectives from practitioners like Heymen and Amaresh as well. So we look forward to continuing this dialogue on the adoption of process intelligence. I agree with Amaresh. It's just early innings. We're just getting started. So thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Ritika.